Hello, my loves. I wanted to do kind of a little cozy book catch up today. I'm recording this at the beginning of 2025, and I started this channel in the early fall of last year, but just with my regular recording schedule and client work. I have another channel, Owl Moon 513. Many of you who have followed me over here who also love books know that, and that really had to take priority. But I didn't stop reading. I never stop reading, really. So I had a book that I wanted to talk about, just to kind of talk about how much I loved this book while it's still fresh in my mind, and also to kind of cap off the end of 2024. Just kind of honoring that I finished reading this book then. And I'm kind of looking at this channel as like a journal, a video journal of my reading experience. And I do want to record a video on the books, some of the books that have changed my life to date. So that I'm hoping to record at some point this month as well. But I wanted to talk about a book that I finished, and then I want to talk about what I'm reading right now and a few books that I bought at Barnes & Noble's on New Year's Eve, because I took myself out to see Nosferatu. And of course, Barnes & Noble's was a few doors down from the cinema. So I went over to Barnes & Noble's as well. I'm also very tired today. I have not been sleeping well the last few nights. So we're all comfy and cozy. It's freezing cold here. The wind is blowing like crazy. We're doing hot cocoa and we're chatting about books, which are best friends. So the book that I wanted to talk about was Emilia Russo's Vivien. This came up as an Amazon recommendation, and I literally just purchased it on a whim. I really liked the cover. Yes, I am that type of book slut. I do love a great cover. I really liked this cover, and it said it was about an artist. So I decided, you know what, it was newly released, Amazon recommended it, sure, why not? So I purchased it, and it arrived, and I stopped reading everything else, and I read it within a 24-hour time frame. I was absolutely gutted and loved this book. It's probably one of my favorite books of 2024. I really, really loved it, and so I wanted to talk about it while it's still fresh in my mind. So I'm going to read the synopsis for you. Set over the course of a fateful week, Vivien deftly weaves surreal prose with a Greek chorus of internet comments and text messages to ask the questions: what is the cost of vision? What is the price of art? What connects creation and procreation, a life and an afterlife? Did Vivien Volker kill Wilma Lang? This question has dogged Vivien ever since Wilma jumped from a window to her death shortly after Volker stole her lover, the visionary artist Hans Bellmer, in the 1970s. Once a famous artist and a fashion icon, Volker is now in her 80s and spends her days in religious contemplation in rural Pennsylvania, alongside her daughter Valora Bellmer, her granddaughter Vesta Furio, her much younger boyfriend, a garbage man named Lou, and Franz, the family dog. Their quiet lives are disrupted when Vivien's work is selected for inclusion in a high-profile retrospective called Forgotten Women Surrealists at the prestigious Nat Museum. However, when rumors of her past misdeeds begin to circulate and she is dropped from the show, a gallery curator enters the picture, hoping to capitalize on the buzz generated by the controversy, sending the family's tensions, hopes, and dreams to a dizzying peak. And it reads very much like a multimedia art installation. There are literally text threads and comment threads from YouTube videos. It's a fascinating way to tell the story. It pulls you in and you can't stop reading it. It is also a very quick read because of that. But what I found to be very moving is, having grown up with an artist, there are other parts to that story which you can deep dive into more on my main channel. I can say that that kind of creative way of living that's described in the wallpaper and the way that the home is set up, it was very indicative of early childhood for me. And so it was actually a very poignant read that was heartbreaking in a lot of ways for me, but it was very, very touching. And I think the direction the story takes, the connections between these three women, and also what we will do for notoriety and fame, some form of fame, because I do think the idea of that is shifting now from what it was thought of when I was younger. But in order to have that notoriety, sometimes what makes a great work of art a great work of art, a lot has to do with how you advertise and promote that, and if you know the right people, etc. And I thought there was an interesting commentary on that that was not the main part of the story, but it was interesting to think about the way that the works of art by the main female artist are described is absolutely stunning. I am a person who, when I read, I see a lot of visuals if it's a really great storyteller. It's like how I know a book is meant to be for me, as if as soon as I start reading, I have visuals going, right, while I'm reading. And I had like full theater, full color visuals for this entire story. I really, really loved this book, and I really wanted to talk about it while it was fresh in my mind. The ending is appropriate for perhaps the direction our society is heading into, and also quite telling in regards to these 3 generations of women and what is unfolding and being released for each of them. And without giving anything away, the ending in some ways feels tragic yet telling. And it really does leave you to sit and reflect after reading it. I did a lot of journaling off of this book, and I really, really, really enjoyed it. And also, when I started doing these videos on this channel, I was working with annotating, and that just became, it was starting to destroy my joy of reading a book. And so I've gone back to writing in my journal or my commonplace notebook, because I started one of those as well. Quotations from the books that I'm enjoying as I'm reading. That's something I've done since I was a teenager, and it's always been a helpful way for me to retain, quotes, yes, but also like the feel of a book over time. So I went back to just doing that, and I let the annotating go because it was really distracting me from just enjoying a book. And this way I have a lovely journal or a great commonplace notebook. I take my, I get to like pause when I reach a place where I really want to remember a quote, or I want to write something down that I feel is core to the theme of the book. And I'll put that in either of these 2 notebooks, and it allows me to carry forward what I want to from the book, but it doesn't distract me from enjoying it. Like, I still haven't finished Lucy Undying, and that's not like me as a reader. I don't like to start something and not finish it, or I will start it and leave it, but I typically am either way. I actually enjoyed Lucy Undying. I'm not obsessed with it, but I was enjoying it. But the process of annotating was really stopping me from making forward momentum in the book. And so I am hoping in the first few months of this year to finish that book, but I won't be annotating the way that I was, because it was really taking away from my experience with just enjoying a book. And for me, reading is one of my favorite pastimes. It's how I treat myself. It's how I take care of myself. It's how I expand my mind. And I don't want to feel like it's a chore, and I don't want to feel stressed if I'm not annotating something that I don't know. I might need to know by a color-coded system, which sounds really cool, but isn't always accessible when you're busy, like so many of us are today. So I released that, and I'm now back to writing notes in my margins and writing in my journal and my commonplace notebook, because thanks to BookTube, I am now obsessed with having a commonplace notebook as well. So I want to talk about 3 books that I'm in the process of reading. If you are a follower on my other channel, you know that I've started reading Dostoevsky's Brother Karamazov. However you correctly pronounce that, please don't come for me. I'm in love with this book. With Tolstoy, I had to find my way into the pacing. And again, that could just have been the translation I read back in, oh God, I think it was 2017. Could have just been a translation that didn't work for me. I just want to have a sip of this while it's warm. Hold on, guys. But, so I was a little bit like, okay, I've always wanted to tackle Dostoevsky. I'm in a really good place. Like, I feel really good in my life in general, so I can really like tap into a classic and just go in deep. I don't need something light to, you know, move me through the day. So I started this book with a little bit of trepidation. Well, I didn't need that trepidation. I don't know if it's just this particular translation or what it is, but I am in love with Dostoevsky's writing voice. I'm very, very, very drawn to this. I purchased this, I think a couple years ago now, and I had been like, oh God, I don't know if I've stretched my reading muscles enough. I didn't need to worry about any of that. I can't stop reading this book. I really, really, really love it. I'm actually really excited to read some of Dostoevsky's other works this year as well. There's just something about his voice that he's narrating it, but you feel like it's like someone that it's like a best friend that you have tea with that's telling you this story over dinner, you know? And there's like, I don't know, a really great cocktail with, I feel like it's got to have whiskey in it that you're enjoying while you are listening to this fascinating story. So I have been taking notes in the way that I said and writing quotations down, things that I want to remember. But I'm really, really enjoying this. And I wanted to share on page 61, I really loved this excerpt. Keep watch on your own lie and examine it every hour, every minute, and avoid contempt, both of others and of yourself. What seems bad to you in yourself is purified by the very fact that you have noticed it in yourself. And avoid fear, though fear is simply the consequence of every lie. Never be frightened at your own faint-heartedness in attaining love. And meanwhile, do not even be very frightened by your own bad acts. I don't know, it's just passages like this that they expand the mind, which is one thing I do love about reading the classics is I always feel like I'm stretching my creative muscles and my muscle as a reader in that I've got to expand, but if I can trust and go to that place, I have a new perspective. And I'm very excited to see where I go with this one because so far, and I'm about 100 pages in, it's just delightful. And I found so many words that I was like, oh, hadn't heard that word before. And that's one of my most favorite things ever. One of my most favorite experiences in reading ever is when I come across a word I don't know and I get to look it up and I write it down. I write down the meaning in the margins of the book. I write down the word and its meaning in my journal, and it becomes something I get to bring into my vocabulary. And I freaking love that. I have since I was young, and I would read Jane Eyre or Wuthering Heights. It's just one of those great experiences. So I'll stop waxing poetical there. I'm really in love with this. Okay, so next I have Amor Towles' Rules of Civility. I actually have the book Gentleman in Moscow, and I think I have Lincoln Highway. But I hadn't read his first book, and I have not read either of those other two books fully. I started Gentleman in Moscow, but I didn't finish it. I do now, after reading this, starting this, I'm making my way through this book. I'm like, I have to go back, but I want to go back and start Gentleman in Moscow from the beginning. I really love Amor Towles' reading voice. Again, it's very easy to just flow with it. And I get these beautiful visuals and big feelings. And he's writing from a female perspective so far with how far I am in Rules of Civility. This is his first book again, and I think he's doing a bang-on job of it. I'm really enjoying this. I'm intrigued to see where it goes. I love the time period that it's set in as well. The current perspective is in the 30s, 1930s. And gosh, it's hitting a bunch of sweet spots for me. I'm really, really glad that I purchased those other two books. And I will definitely be reading his other books this year. I'm not sure if I'll purchase his short stories. I'm pretty picky about my short stories because that's his most recent release. But gosh, do I love his writing voice. It's absolutely beautiful. And he's a gorgeous man too. I was watching some interviews that he did on YouTube and I was like, he's a stunning man. So Amor Towles, Rules of Civility. I'm thoroughly enjoying this one. It takes place in the 1930s. And it's about a woman who's attempting to make it in New York society, like make her way up in New York society. So I don't want to say too much more because I'm in the middle of reading it. I don't have a full opinion yet. And I don't want to, if you are interested in reading it, I don't want to take that opportunity away from you. But I will say it's one of those things for me. I don't like setting a goal to read a certain amount of books in a year because I don't read to tick off boxes. I read because I love reading. So that's never been like something that motivates me. I'm always in my booktube experience looking for people who are just focused on the joy of reading and speaking about a book when they finish. I love when you can have a conversation with someone about a book you read. So I'm more about quality over quantity and really sitting with a book, sitting with the feel of it, stepping into the world, taking your time. It's like taking a hot bath. Like you want to enjoy it and take your time. So for me, I don't have that like, I want to read this many books in a calendar year. And I love that I already have Amor Towles' 2 other books. And now I can go into my library and read them and they're already there. So I'm also not like a minimalist book collector. I'm just not. And I love having a full library. And I love that there are books in my library that I haven't read. And so when the right time comes, I can just go to that place. I know exactly where it is in my collection because I'm a Taurus sun. So I'm a little bit of a dragon with my hoard. I know exactly where my books are. And I can go and enjoy that author at the right time. And just because I purchased the book in 2022 doesn't mean I need to read it in 2022. So yeah. The other book I'm reading right now is Byung-Chul Han's The Burnout Society. This is a philosophy book. And it's a small one. I'm getting close to halfway through now. You definitely want to read this slow. It is a contemplative read. I like to read a chapter, reflect, make a few notes, read another chapter or 2 the next day with the same process. I am, as someone who makes their living off of their craft, have in my life been feeling very tired the last few months and very guilty for taking time off. I feel very guilty if I'm not working 7 days a week. And that's just not sustainable for anyone. So I ended up coming across some of Byung-Chul Han's work because of what I was feeling within myself and wanting to offer myself a different perspective so that I could make some healthy changes that I need to in my personal life for rest. And I really love Byung-Chul Han's perspective. So he's South Korean, but he's teaching from a German philosophy milieu, if you will. And there are a lot of interesting perspectives that he offers around why we are at where we are. And I'm really enjoying this read. And I shared this with my Patreon peeps for my other channel the other day, but I will read here this piece for you from page 11, Beyond Disciplinary Society. The achievement subject stands free from any external instance of domination, forcing it to work, much less exploiting it. It is lord and master of itself. Thus, it is subject to no one, or as the case may be, only to itself. It differs from the obedience subject on this score. However, the disappearance of domination does not entail freedom. Instead, it makes freedom and constraint coincide. Thus, the achievement subject, which he's saying is those of us in modern day society, gives itself over to compulsive freedom, that is, to the free constraint of maximizing achievement. Excess work and performance escalate into auto-exploitation. This is more efficient than allo-exploitation. So auto-exploitation is when you exploit yourself. Allo-exploitation is when you are exploited by someone else. This is more efficient than alloexploitation, for the feeling of freedom attends it. The exploiter is simultaneously the exploited. Perpetrator and victim can no longer be distinguished. Such self-referentiality produces a paradoxical freedom that abruptly switches over into violence because of the compulsive structures dwelling within it. The psychic indispositions of achievement society are pathological manifestations of such a paradoxical freedom. So as you can see, I'm really enjoying this one. I'm taking my time with it. I'm savoring it. Really, really enjoying it. Okay, so I wanted to finish our last moments together with a sip of hot chocolate because I have a little bit of a sore throat. And I just wanted to share what I purchased while I was at Barnes & Noble. So please forgive me if I'm mispronouncing this author's name. There are two sections that I always go to when I go to any bookstore. Well, actually there's three. The poetry section, the journal section, and the horror section. And outside of those, I will often visit the classic section within a bookstore. So I started at the poetry section and I found this book of collected poetry, A Penguin Classics by Borges. I hope I'm pronouncing their name correctly. Had no pre-awareness of this poet, even though he's apparently a very big deal. And so what I liked about this is that we have the poem in the original in the author's original language here, and then we have the American translation here. And I thought that that would be a really enjoyable way to spend my time getting to know this poet. And then I just opened up and read some of the poetry, and I was like, oh, this is good. It's a little bit different than my typical poetry choice. I love Sonia Vitomsky. I love E.E. Cummings. I tend to go more that route with my poetry. This is a different voice. And much like, I'm not saying they sound anything alike because they don't, so please don't think I'm saying that. But Edna St. Vincent Millay, her poems make me kind of stop and reflect. And after I read some of the poems here, I walked around Barnes & Noble's a little bit and I was reflecting on those poems and I was like, okay, I know this has to go home with me then. So I purchased this. I haven't read more than just a few poems in the book. I'm not like focused on reading it, but I do have it on my bedstand table, which means it'll be one of those books I reach for in those moments when I just need to talk with a best friend, which is what I consider my books. My books have always been my best friends. So another book that I got was We Need No Wings by Anne Davila Cardinal. And this is about a woman who can levitate. She finds this out after she loses her husband and she's in a process of grieving. And then her life is thrown into disarray. So I loved the conundrum that our main character is left with, because it says she will soon have to decide whether to remain shrouded in her grief or open her heart to a world where we need no wings to fly. So I thought this looked really great. One of my best friends loves Spain. She just traveled there over the last year. And to hear her describe Spain, it seems so colorful, vibrant, and alive. And so I thought reading a book that takes place in that country would also be something that would be very warming for my heart and soul in the frigid New England cold air right now. So the other book that I got was Butter by Asako Yuzuki. I love Japanese authors. Murakami is, yeah. I love Japanese authors. So when I saw this on one of the recommended tables at Barnes & Noble's, I was like, I don't even care what it's about. It's a Japanese author. I'm probably going to enjoy the unique way of storytelling compared to American modern day writing voices. And it's about a serial killer and it's about food. It just doesn't get better. I was like, I don't even care. And then I read the back and I was like, it's even better than I thought. So this is about a cook who is also a serial killer. And it's inspired by a real case. So it says it's a vivid, unsettling exploration of misogyny, obsession, romance, and the transgressive pleasures of food in Japan. So Yes, and the cover is amazing, and I thought I have to get that. I couldn't leave Barnes & Noble's A Novel of Food and Murder. Hello, I'm here for it. So the last book that I purchased was The Story of the Forest by Linda Grant. This takes place in World War I, and it moves through to the present day. And it is about the European Jewish experience. And it says it constantly moves forward even as it looks sorrowfully back. So the main character's name is Mina, and they end up, she and I believe it is her brother, her eldest brother, Yassel, please excuse me if I'm mispronouncing that. They end up in Liverpool as they're dealing with the Bolsheviks. Like, they end up having to relocate to Liverpool. And then it's telling the story of this family. It says, Mina and Yassel will learn that not everyone in their family has survived the wars and pogroms, even as they and their offspring struggle to build new lives in Liverpool in the midst of ever-shifting discriminations. It's a remarkable record of family lore and a meditation on the power of stories to ground us, particularly in the face of life's inevitable losses. And I thought it just sounded really lovely. The cover is also gorgeous, and it just felt like a read that would be poignant and also, again, give me some opportunity to reflect and ruminate. And I do think that we often find ways into healing and new perspective from story. And so I'm very intrigued to see what this does for me and my own heart, as well as my own perspectives after I read it. So those are the books that I purchased in my recent haul. And those are also the books I'm reading right now, as well as a love letter to Vivien. The prose in that book, oh my God, it was so gorgeous and decaying and insane and gripping and heartbreaking. And so if it sounds like something that might be your cup of tea, I would definitely recommend you check that one out. But thanks for hanging out with me for about half an hour, guys. It's been wonderful to get to catch up. I'm hoping to be recording more book videos, in the new year. I'm hoping to have a little more time to do that as I adjust my schedule for some quiet space in 2025. I am sending you guys, as always, oceans of love, and I will, of course, see you in the next video. Take care.